But I'd like to relate an experience I had when I was in prison. You know, when I was in prison, I was just as active as I am out here. You know, the fact of the matter is, I was one of the chief organizers in Attica, and but there was a time I was in prison. There was a guy that slept in the same dormitory with me, and he was white, and me and him were good friends. Every day he'd get the Wall Street Journal and all the financial papers, and he would lock himself in his cubicle, and he would read these things all day, right? So I'm curious about everything. I became a critical thinker at the age of 16, which was many years ago, you know. And so I began to take an interest in financial matters, right? I'd already taken many courses at Bucknell University on macro and microeconomics, and during the course of my education, I was familiar with economic theory, you know, and I read Marx and Engels and all the rest of them. But something struck me about this gentleman. His total focus was the stock market, right? And I began to start taking interest in this thing, and the question rose in my mind, the contrast between me and him, and men like myself. We were engaged in black history, you know, revolutionary theories, everything to do with struggle and everything to do with being black. And this guy was concerned about how he was going to make a living, and he was playing the market while he was in there. Ended up getting me to play the market too. You know, I ended up borrowing some money from somebody, and I started playing the market myself. But his mind was not burdened with all the issues that I was burdened with. You know, he didn't have to deal with racism. He didn't have to deal with abuse of authority. He didn't have to deal with a criminal justice system that targeted him and reduced him to slavery. He had none of that in his head. His head was clear. He could focus on the present, but we stayed locked in the past, you know, and stayed locked in the circumstances and conditions that we came into the world in, you know. And I'm thinking to myself, man, this guy is free, and I'm not. You know. And as attractive as what he was doing, and as much sense as it made to me, because like Bill Clinton said, it's the economy, stupid. You know. And a lot of us, we get caught up in the struggle, and we don't understand that the underpinnings of everything that's happened to us had economic reasons, man. From the time they brought us from the shores of Africa all the way up to the day, it's been the economy. You know, they can talk about racism and you know, all these labels and divisions that they created, but underneath it all, you know, and anybody that studied Marx will tell you the same thing. You know, it's the economy. This is what determines how we think, how we view the world, how our world is shaped, right? Now, each and every one of us, when we're born, we come into the world in different places. Some of us come in Jamaica, some of us come in Haiti, some of us come in Africa, some of us come in China. And the way you come into the world, your world is what shapes you. You come in, blank sheet of paper. And every aspect of your life is shaped. Like Shaka said, it's culture, it's geography, you know, and what else?
It's culture, language, traditions.
Culture, language, and traditions. This is what shapes you. You come into the world, they open up your head, and they keep pouring this stuff in there, right? You go to school, the first thing they teach you is pledge allegiance to the flag, you know, and they feed you all the myths about how great America is. You know, it's that exceptional nation, and you know,
savior of the world.
Yeah, savior of the world. You know,
Before you learn your name.
They ain't been here but 250 something years, and they got civilizations that go back thousands, go back to the beginning of human history. So seeing this and having that experience, it made me realize what I just got through saying to you, is that our lives are shaped not by us, but it's shaped by external conditions, right? At least for the first part of our lives. You see the little kid come in the world, he's interested in everything. He's, as was said earlier by Claudia, I think, that everywhere he goes, he wants to know. He has a critical mind. He questions everything. I mean, if he see something over there that he didn't see over there before, I mean, everything. Nothing is left unturned, right? But the education that they give us in this system is designed to defeat that, right? First of all, you put him in a classroom and you lock him in there for 8 hours a day, and he's nothing, or he or she is nothing but a ball of energy, and curiosity. And you shut their world down to this little square classroom, and expect to hold their attention and penalize them for not paying attention, And we just open up their heads, like I say, we just pour in all the stuff and the garbage and, that comprises our culture and the laws and the way of life that we've come to know as our world. And this is the only world that child knows. He has nothing to compare it with. She has nothing to compare it with. This is their world, right? So I come into the world just like Shaka and Claudia, and in my world, in Harlem, it's the streets. If I come into a world, my mother could have starred in that movie, The Help, because that's what she did. My father was a merchant marine. He traveled all over the world, so I had no dad there, And poverty and all of the rest of the things that go on in communities of color was what I was subjected to. And I had to make choices. I had to make choices before I even knew who I was, right? Because I have to survive, right? And this is what we see, what's happening with our youth out here today. They're going through the same thing. Everybody says, well, what are we going to do about the youth? We can't do nothing about the youth until we change the environment, right? Till we change the environment, till we change the world that they live in. We can't take them in a room and sit them down and we're going to talk to them and, everything's going to be, an economy where there's no jobs, in New York City, African-American females, 45% unemployed, African-American males, 55%, youth, 60%, 70%, How do you change anything for them? You got men going into prison, coming out. The opportunity structure has absolutely nothing for them. They're surplus people, throwaway people. Right? But getting back to the point I wanted to make, how we come into the world and the world we come into shapes our minds. But it's only for a while. Some of us rise to the level where we begin to look at the world critically, and we realize that this is a human construct. Human beings put this together, man. Everything that you see in this room here was manufactured and produced by human beings. Those streets out there, those cars, those planes, all of those are human constructs. And the culture is also a human construct, right? Slavery was something that they created, and people that were born into slavery from on the side of the slaves, their struggle was already written for them. And the people that were born on the side of the masters, their role in life was already written for them, And theirs was to suppress, and ours was to overthrow, right? Well, it's the same thing today. We find ourselves in a world where we are the regulated, and they are the regulators. They are the ones that determine the parameters of our world. They have us locked into the Harlems of America, and their response to us, like I say, it's the economy. There's no longer any cotton to pick. There's no factories to work in, and we're surplus labor. And this is why you see the whites suddenly rising up down and occupy Wall Street, and they're all over the country occupying, because suddenly this rose to their level. It begins to impact them. Those that were complicit with capitalism in oppressing us, they were complicit in the racial structures that we grew up in. They turned a blind eye to it. Silence is consent.
That's right.
They went along with it. You understand? Now all of a sudden they're feeling the impact, and now we occupying Wall Street.
After they occupied everything
and we're
else.
talking about the 1% and the 99%, right? But their struggle is a little different than our struggle. But once again, for them, just like it was for us, it's the economy. It's the economy. We cannot compete with Chinese labor. We cannot compete with Indian labor, Brazilian labor, South African labor. We can't compete with it. American labor has priced itself out of the market. So there's no jobs, and there's not going to be any. They can sit around here and keep feeding us dreams, Obama and all the rest of them. But this economy is busted. So what do? We who on every index of misery in this country are at the top. I don't care what it is. African Americans are at the top of every index of misery there is, whether it's health, whether it's financial, whether it's housing, whether it's health care. I don't care what it is. We're the group that are most negatively impacted by these indexes. So what do? Do we accept this? Do we continue doing what they say? If you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got, right? Right? We've been having rallies up here in Harlem. I participated in one Monday. And they were marching against mass incarceration. They demonstrated in front of Wells Fargo Bank, because Wells Fargo supports private prisons, which impacts immigrants and people of color, But the majority of the people out there were white. I mean, I'm talking about, white people, man. We've been taught that they're the problem, And they were out there, and we're the ones that are most critically impacted. Yet we were not out there, man. So what's going on in our communities? Have we drank the Kool-Aid? Did we walk through the poppy field and fall asleep? I kind of think so. I kind of think so. And so the task for us that are organizers, like Shaka and Claudia and myself, and those of you in the audience that are out there walking the walk and not just talking the talk, we have a major job ahead of us, man. And our job is one thing: wake them up, right? We have to wake up our communities, man. Here's somebody that's on food stamps, but they got a flat screen TV in their house, you understand? And they getting their food stamps and they Section 8 housing. And they sitting there with their feet up watching television, and all over the world they see murder, strife, poverty, disease, and they think they're doing good. Man, they turn on the TV and they see all that misery there, and then they get up and go in the kitchen, man, and pop some corn and fix some Kool-Aid. Everything is fine. Everything is not fine. Everything is not fine. America has the biggest prison population in the history of mankind. Not just today on the planet, but in the history of human beings on this planet. We have more human beings in cages than any other civilization that ever existed on this planet. And 60% of them are us, African Americans and Latinos. Yet we represent only maybe 26% of the population of the United States. in New York State, we represent over 90% of those that are locked up in cages. Yeah. So, in the light of this here, and with present trends being what they are, how does our future look? Huh? How do we look? I mean, what do you see in the future that inspires you to say, well, it's going to be all right? Huh? The future looks bleak for us. Unless and until we come together and begin to speak in one voice and get over these divisions that we have in our communities, you know, based on color, skin, ethnicity, race. Africans coming from Africa don't even speak to African Americans. You know, until we get over this, till we get past this here, until we begin to develop a vision of what it is that we want, that we see, a future that we see, that we can work towards together. You know, the circumstances that we find ourselves in now will continue, and it will grow worse. As I said, you know, we 5% of the world's population, they got 25% of the world's prisoners. And everywhere, America has 170 military bases all over the world. And everywhere they got a base, they got a jail or a detention center or a prison, right? And they you know, all they do is take our youth and their youth and train them and make serial killers out of them and send them all over the world to rob other people of their resources and dominate and try to regulate the entire world. This is the world we live in. And it's not going to get better for us until we begin to realize this and stop waiting for the Messiah to come along and change things. You know, the people that will change things are the people that's in this room, the people that's in our community.